So there's.
But his brother.
I mean, make it all my brother.
Sort of. Something to do about calling him about. Because I missed a lot of. I will remember this. I really haven't had any of it, but. Just trying to. You don't want to. Everybody is.
Yeah, why not?
24 hours.
24 hours.
It's fun.
Season.
My son's going.
Yeah.
Next time, thank you. I might not like that you're reading, but it's good reading.
I'm not smart.
Yourself. Kind of solid plan.
Who wants to do it again?
Call to order the board of work meeting for.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Persons for everyone, for their coming for their protection, all of our employees going to us, fellowships today. And same, take them well, keep them well, and we will pray for them.
I'm using that. You is that okay? I heard it. I'll get a chance to. Take a look at the previous meeting minutes, November 3rd minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Down to November 17th.
The November 17th, and it's in front of you. Sarah, captured, an omission by me, so I put that in, just reflecting who seconded the motion and, with your vote passage regarding putting back on, the utilities in that first body of the paragraph.
To approve of revise, will that be? Yeah. You want to make that motion? I'll second it. Yeah. All right, thanks.
Okay, so before you is also, two different meeting schedules for the 2026 year. Council has voted to go back to 2 meetings a month. So you have a schedule in front of you to stay the first Monday of a month unless it is on a holiday, which it will be the Tuesday there prior. Or if you would like to go back to 2 meetings a month, that schedule is before you as well. So for you to decide accordingly.
Decision, was that canceled?
Council's decided to do theirs.
State council decided theirs, yes.
This will be.
So this is for you all.
What do you think? Do you think we need to?
Either. I don't think it'd be confusing. I kind of like the 2 meetings a month. So, only button.
As things come up, a month is on them. If we don't have anything,
We can cancel that.
I'll make the motion to go back to 2 meetings a month.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. I'll get that advertised accordingly.
Now we're ready for the 2026 fire contract.
My name's Cameron Cook. I'm president of the Professional Firefighters of Alexandria Local 1649. It's under my understanding that everybody, I think, received a contract or a copy of the contract. I do appreciate working with you guys. 7%, I believe, is what we came to an agreement with. That's everybody else's understanding, then I'm asking you to pass it tonight.
They did give up, hiring us another person in order to.
No, that was the police. I think.
So it wasn't under my understanding.
Well, we talked, Darcy had said there was enough budget to hire another person,
Okay.
right? There was.
Good.
I know you don't. Yeah.
I'll make the motion, to accept the 7%.
Got seconds. Okay, all in favor? Aye.
I thought we had already done the salary. And do the contract.
No, this is. Yeah,
Yes,
but
I did not do the contract.
Mhm.
Okay, so I'm sure that everybody knows that.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Only 5:30 and like 5:45. Consider the meeting here before 5:45. Yeah, it's okay. I feel better. That's good. I gotta work tonight, so.
Roads are getting bad.
Yeah, it's coming down.
Give me some rights out there.
Yes, there will be.
Thank you.
What called it? That's just.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Wednesdays. I just drove up the driveway, just went by all the vehicles.
Oh, yeah. And Stellar, yeah. No, that's right. Wow, I'll get it all. It's like the owner.
Clear.
Okay, okay.
We're only a couple years away. Yes. It's gotta be. It's good. I'm talking. I want to make business of it. I don't care. It's just, so it's nice. I'm all wrong. Ready for it. Where are you? We buy one. We got. I don't like it. If you have money, and I wish I could see it. That's. I can win this.
Yes.
Yep.
Was that exclusive? That was exclusive, so I know that.
I do too.
Airplane. Go to airplane.
The 14th.
No, she just have something else. She always loves to track. If that's what it is, then I don't
Is the fax machine that we use now, the one that's down there?
We can.
So it's still.
Fun. I was, I don't really, did it sense of there. Yes, and so. My dad loved it. She got better. Every once in a while, she can't get something on the head. He doesn't like food, so that's not on the table. He's like, "Oh, my Christmas."
We both see what he's doing. I see about what he does.
Right. So, you know.
We. I community partnership fund is part of it. Pick up my pass to do it. I'm sending to really do it. It's expensive as hell.
So we went over there too.
Much to do it.
And she always said, "Yeah, so he has 2 years.
Sorry. My community. Commissioners potentially for them.
I didn't really. I didn't.
You said the state was.
I have to. But he said that's what. Wow.
That'd be something that would go.
My daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We expect you to use it on Madison County.
That's code.
Pretty boy down now. So this is. Like man, it's fine.
That's what I need to go on. So Joe. I didn't know what first.
So, our feedback is. Based on our, maybe something. We don't need to be over number, so.
All right, on every Monday.
There you go. Thanks.
Go back to summer. Come here.
You know, he wants to help, so he don't.
Put some money in the water plant. We put some money in the water plant. What happened last week? I'm gonna call like.
I had a plug in Maine, bust under the ditch. I was 6 feet. I called,
Ron, he's out, he's got pretty bad cancer. He's been off since like September.
so let me ask you, this is a great time to ask this. If I need somebody, don't call down, do I need to just call direct into the control room?
Somebody did.
What I do.
Somebody did.
Well, I was underwater, so Darcy, they didn't believe her, so she answered the phone to me.
Okay. Yeah, you can, that's what you can call the director controller. You can call me.
Okay.
Yeah, Ron. Yeah.
Wait a minute, I gotta check. I didn't know we had hands. Oh, I didn't.
It's good. You can use in September. You do chemotherapy. Mark.
That's why he's on.
You'd rather have him out there.
You lost my number after all these years. And I thought,
Well, no, I've changed phones since then.
Keep it want you to go. You ready, Mayor?
Here.
I am. Call to order. 7:30 council meeting, 6:39. 8672.
Roll call, Roger Cuneo,
Present.
John Burchell. Here. Gillens,
Present.
Jeremy Banner,
Here, Jeremy.
Amy Curry, Dave Luck.
Here.
John Kirk,
Present.
Brooke Frederick, Darcy Van Erman, and also here in our city attorney.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda, order of topics this evening. To move Professor Doug Schmidt is here to speak to carbon capture. So due to travel, I'd like to move him up to, before public comment and then move public comment to the end, which there is none. So if that's okay with you guys,
A second.
all in favor?
All in favor?
Thanks.
Like. That's the guy we're trying to. Yeah, you can, I'm putting that mic.
So, many of us have heard about Poet and their plans to do carbon capture within the area. The mayor's taken a couple meetings on it, and with that, there's always more questions. We understood that many of you had questions and wanted to know exactly what carbon capture is. Therefore, we reached out to Dr. Schmidt and asked him if he could come and let us all know exactly what Poet is looking at doing and how it affects Alexandria, the earth, all that kind of stuff. So if you
Sure.
wouldn't mind.
Okay, I guess I need to share here. And hopefully people can see the screen then. No.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's there. Okay, so yeah, thanks for inviting me. I've done a lot of these things now, right? And for the last 2 years, it's been slowing down, right? But let me talk about my background a little bit. And so I was a professor at University of Alberta for almost 30 years. And then in 2018, Purdue decided they wanted an old guy, so they hired me. And I'm a geophysicist, so I study things like seismic and rock properties and things like that. And back when I was professor in Alberta, I was involved quite a bit. It's been going on for quite a while, the CO2 injection. So first, it's been going on with what's called enhanced oil recovery. And there's way more of that's been going on for the last 40 years already, right? That's where you inject CO2 into a reservoir, and I'll talk a bit more about that, right? So I was involved with that in a field near, it's called Weyburn, it's near the border with North Dakota, and they were shipping CO2 from a plant in North Dakota over the border in a pipeline to Barrie, right? And the oil becomes less viscous and it flows. The other one I've been involved with is not too far from there. It was a coal-fired power plant, and Sask Power, the big power generator in Saskatchewan, was trying to get ahead of the technology. And and I'm just on the geology side. There's a whole other field to it where you extract the CO2 out of coal-fired power plants, and that as it's burning. The Poet guys with these ethanol plants, it's super easy. It's just producing almost pure CO2 anyways, right? That, goes into beer and pop and used for things, right? So they don't have to do a lot of work, but that's another story. what I'll do is just give you my impressions, right? And you know, I'm not, I'm just a professor. I'm not, and my experiences, and I'll try and give you a sense for what, the geology is and what's happening in the geology, what's going on, what the geology looks like here, right? Because I know a lot of people just don't know that, right? And then, I'm open for questions and you can always, I'm easy to find, right? You can always shoot me an email or whatever, right? If you want to later. So let me just give an overview. And so, is this working? Oh, I gotta turn it on, would help. And yeah, this is, okay. Okay, come on. Oh, no, don't tell me. Sorry, technical. There we go. Okay, so what is it? So the basic idea is, right, you have a large source of CO2, right? Coal-fired power plant, cement plant, steel refinery. In the case here, there's a lot of these going on now in Indiana. Just about every ethanol plant now is getting CO2 going, right? So and ethanol produces a lot of CO2. So there's still the tax credits, which actually surprised me, right, that are there, and that's why they're probably going for this. Otherwise, it wouldn't be eco. Anyways, you grab the CO2, and then you from a large source, and you transport it one way or another, usually a pipeline, and then you store it deep in the earth, as deep as you can. And I'll talk about what that looks like here in beneath us. Okay. And then the idea basically it's gone forever. So a lot of the big companies, the Microsofts, the Amazons, they see this as much more dependable because it's gone. It's not like you put money into a forest somewhere and then the forest burns down in 20 years and you haven't gained a thing, right? So I'll talk about what happens as it gets down there. Okay, and so where would you put it? So brine-filled sandstones, that's one thing. That's what's beneath us here in the base. And I'll talk more about that. And then there's mineral trapping. That's not really right here. We don't have the right kind of rocks. And then there's old oil and gas reservoirs, and there's not a lot of those around here either, right? So the way to store it here would be in what are called these old, well, not old, they're just the porous formations that are beneath us, and they're filled basically with really heavy brines, okay? Much, much stronger than seawater. And so this is not to scale, but this is the idea, right? You collect it and you pipeline it, and then you put it down way beneath the water table into as deep as we can get. There's some important things in here. So there'd be these porous reservoirs, rocks, and they're filled with the brine. But an important part of that on top of it is then you need what's called a seal. And a seal is a very impermeable rock, like a shale. Okay, fluids don't come through that very easily. And so, that's what holds a lot of oil and gas reservoirs with you've got a porous sandstone, and then on top of it, there's this seal rock that keeps it for millions of years, right? It doesn't go anywhere. So, what kind of spacing can we have? So just to give you an idea what this brine is. So potable water, say, is about 300 to 500 parts per million. And seawater is about 35,000 parts per million. And these brines down here, they can vary from place to place, but you don't want them near the surface, say 60,000 parts per million and above, right? So that's what you're putting it into, right? These really, really heavy, salty kinds of waters that are beneath us here. So quite deep. And then how much CO2 might we store? This is globally. So typically we're putting out about 35 gigatons. I know that doesn't mean anything. I actually kind of calculated. So it'd be a cube, if you made it into dry ice, about a mile by a mile by a mile, okay, per year of CO2. And where could we put things? Old oil and gas, maybe up to 900 gigatons. And deep saline layers that we're talking about, we don't know because there's so many of them. There's a lot of places it could go, maybe 10,000 gigatons, right? So there's a lot of storage down there. Okay, there's a lot of places to put things. So what happens to the CO2? And So you inject it. Then this is not the case here. Things are flatter, but it goes in, and so you get portions of it that are going to be trapped by this seal, which is this shale that's beneath us too here. Okay, and that would be like just kind of free CO2 in the pore spaces of these rocks. And then with time, they're going to react with the minerals in there, and you make new minerals, and then that's what you would ideally, right? Then it's trapped forever in minerals. That takes a long time. And then some of it just is just capillary forces, right? Like when you're the things that draw things up in the tree, fluid, or when you're sucking, right? All these capillary forces, they trap bubbles and that quite strongly too. In tiny pores, the forces are immense, right? And that's one of the things that actually holds it in place when it's down there too. So there's these different ways to how it'll kind of move around when it's in there. And so structural trapping, it's going to be trapped by this thing called the Eau Claire shale, right? Then bubbles are going to be caught in small pores by residual trapping, that's capillary forces. And then some of it's going to dissolve, just like, CO2 goes into beer and soda, right? And the same thing. So you can that will just naturally go into the brine, which then sinks down to the bottom. And then mineral trapping, that's what you want, in the long term. It's going to be a mineral and it's going to be locked away. And these can take various times. It depends on a lot of factors. What is the chemistry of the brines down there? What are the minerals there? What are they going to react with? So on and so forth. So these are kind of timelines. So injection, say 15 years or so, 20 years, depending what kind of permits they get, right? Then there's going to be that fluid will move, but then capillary forces will actually balance that. So there'll kind of be what's called a plume down there where, there's gas and brine kind of mixed. And then physical trapping, that's on the order of 50 or so years. Dissolution, just going into the fluid there will take a while, and residual trapping, like these are hundreds of years kind of thing. Mineralization, who knows, hundreds to thousands of years, and so on and so forth. So anyways, it's down there, but the main point is it's not really going to go anywhere after a certain point. All these capillary forces and things are going to find a equilibrium, and it'll stay, right? And so the petroleum engineers, right, they're going the other way, right? They're usually taking things out. So they model how, they develop pretty sophisticated ways to understand how fluids are flowing and mixed fluids are flowing and all of that, right? So they use similar models to study how things are going to go. So if they understand what the rock properties are. And so what are some other similar experiences? So that are around. So this is the enhanced oil recovery. And this is basically production per day going forward, right? So in the US, producing almost 1 million barrels, 700,000 barrels a day of oil just from CO2 injection. Now I'm going to state some about the CO2 they're using is quite different than the CO2 coming out of Poets plant. Poets plant is pretty much pure CO2, right? The stuff that they're injecting in these oil reservoirs, that's actually kind of from oil reservoirs, so it's contaminated with a lot of nasty, organics in that, right? So they're kind of different, but there's 60 to 70 megatons a year of that currently, have been for decades now. The other one that I was involved with was the enhanced oil recovery. That was coming from North Dakota. Now it's coming from that power plant. There was a 200-mile pipeline. Basically, it was 5,000 tons per day of CO2 being injected into it's really heavy oil. There's a really good chance that the gasoline in your car came from that oil field, okay? Because a lot of the oil in this part of the world, right, had whatever we are, it comes from Alberta and Saskatchewan. So the really heavy oils, and it gets refined. So, and that's, in 2019, it was up over 40 megatons. So there's probably 50 megatons or so by now in that field. Other ones with CO2. So this is oil production, right? That's a different thing that we're talking about. We're talking about putting the CO2 in the ground and it's there forever, right? So some examples here are Sleipner. This has been going since 1996, and it finished in 2018. This was a great big, of course, suspected spam. Sorry, I should have shut it down there. So what was happening? It was in the North Sea, halfway between England and Norway, and the natural gas was like 25% CO2 or something. So the Norwegian government made them get rid of it, right? And so they injected that into the earth at about a megaton per year, and they're probably going to do more here now. The one in Alberta, where I was near Edmonton, close to, right, that's been going. It's called Quest. That's a Shell refinery, and they pipe it about 50, 60 miles to the repository site into the borehole. And that's going about a megaton per year. And there's about 8 or 9, I got to update that. There's probably, closer to 10 megatons in there now. Okay. And this one actually is very similar. The geology in Alberta has a lot of similarities to the geology here, right? So very similar kind of a situation here in terms of what's at the bottom of the pile. The one that's closest, this was more a test site, Decatur in Illinois. You probably heard about that, some of you, right? And they've injected for a megaton. That's ethanol plant, and they're applying for more now, right? That was a test case. There was a lot of research done on that one. So those are some previous experiences that have been going. What are other similar things around here? Okay, now this isn't CO2, but the natural gas that we use in the winter right now, right? I mean, there's natural gas that's being produced from wells. You just don't turn the wells on and off, right? They got to flow. And so what happens is we consume a lot of gas now, right? In the winter, we don't consume so much gas in the summer. So you may not know it, but most of the gas you're using is now coming from these fields where natural gas has been stored. Okay, and probably not to the same level of rigor or safety that we're doing with the CO2 wells, because these were done, say, in the 70s and 80s. Okay, a lot of this stuff, infrastructure was put in place. So I guess the closest one is out at Randolph County there to you. Okay, and then these are just nasty things that they put in the ground, right? that the steel mills and that into porous layers, just to give you a feel for what else is going on that have been, and this has been going on for decades. Those are called classmen. So why here? And we're sitting in something, and we're on the edge of it actually, right? But the geology is the same. This is called the Illinois Basin, and is basically a big hole in the ground. And for whatever reasons, about 540 million years ago, or before that, everything was scraped almost to the Canadian Shield. It happened in Alberta. It happened in the basement in North Dakota and Saskatchewan. These are different basins, and we're in another basin called Illinois Basin, and there's one over there called the Michigan Basin, right? And the same thing happened. And then they started to fill in. These things were scraped right to the hard rock. If you ever go up into Michigan, right, northern Michigan, and you see the hard rock, that's the Canadian Shield, right? And so that Canadian Shield is beneath us. And then sediments started to fill in there. And the first one that came in was this thing. This would be like a cross section all the way across the basin. And you see there's all these different kinds of colored layers, right? And the first one that was deposited is this thing called the Mount Simon. And that's a sandstone. And I'll talk more about what, these sandstones are. And on top of it is this thing called the Eau Claire. And that's a shale. So, how the sedimentation patterns changed or whatever. And you were depositing these really clean sandstones at that time. And then something changed and you dumped a lot of actually mud and it became shale with time. Okay. And then you have various things above that. And this is a 3D view. Actually, I guess we're more here, right? That was probably when I was talking at Wabash County or something. But and that would be the 3D view of what that sandstone looks like. And I'll talk a bit more about what that sandstone is. So this is where they want to put it, okay? Because it's as deep as you can get. And it also should have the characteristics that you want to put CO2 in, that you can put fluids into. There's a lot of pore space. And so how thick is it? So we're here, right? Well, how deep is it? We're Madison. We're probably looking, if you can get your color, say 4,000, 5,000 feet beneath us, right? Would be the depth of the top of that sandstone, okay? And then beneath that, right, is going to be, say, it's really thick sandstone, right? You know, say 600 to 800 feet. I don't know, I'd have to go look more exactly. And we don't know precisely because there haven't been a lot of drilling around here, you know, all the way down to that basement because there was no economic reason to do it. So if you go to Alberta or you go to Texas or places like that, there's boreholes all over the place. And, you know, because they were going down and looking for oil and gas. And there really hasn't been much oil or gas exploration here. So, but the trends, the basin itself is pretty simple. And so from boreholes here and there, you can, this is from the Geological Survey of Indiana, right? They put that together from existing knowledge. And that'll be one of the things that they test. One of the first things they do, they'll probably drill a well just to make sure they know how deep all of these different layers are exactly at the place they want to do it. Okay, so they have an idea, but they'll be drilling just to see what's there before anything happens. Or that's what I would do if I was doing it, right? Because you need to know, right? And the Environmental Protection Agency is going to make them do that too, right? Because they have to go through this whole kind of series of approvals. So what does this look like? So this is actually from Illinois. I know you can't, it's the sandstone. That's what, it's a really coarse grained type of sandstone. It's really actually quite hard. Okay. It's surprisingly hard. I had a piece from a similar formation in Saskatchewan and I should have brought it to show you. I don't have a piece of this. But it's, you know, about 500 million years old. This is the key thing. It's porosity. It means what's the percentage of the thing of its volume is just pore versus quartz grains. It's up to, you know, up to 25 to 30%. So I mean that's a really, really porous kind of a rock. And 25% of it is basically holes. Okay. And this was sort of my Wabash. And what does that look like? So this is a scanning electron microscope picture, right? So when you're studying these rocks, these are things you do. You look at it at the small scale because you want to see what the pore spaces are and all that. So here's the quartz grains and you see the holes, right? And you can see that that's, you know, 25% just black, right, in that one. And those pores, say they're the thickness of a hair, okay? So you've got huge amounts of space down there, but it's, you know, when I've been to other meetings, people say, well, there's big caves down there. And those are good questions because I know people don't know, right? And no, there aren't caves and there's tiny little pores in the rocks, okay? And they're porous, you could blow on them and you can feel air go through, okay? So they're like a filter essentially. So that's thickness of a hair, say typically of a pore. So this is the rock that's right on the bottom, on top of the Canadian Shield. That's where they want to put the CO2. And this rock is right above this one. This is called the Eau Claire Shale. And that's called a cap rock, right? That's or seal rock. That's what they call it in the petroleum industry. And it's really low permeability, okay? Fluids just won't go through it. This thing, fluids are going to go through no problem. It's like a sponge, right? Basically, just fluid goes in. This one, you know, there's really no pore space, and it's all basically sealed up, and fluids have a difficult time getting through it, unless there's something else that's broken it. Okay, and that'll, you know, will be some of the things they'll be looking for. Is there a chance that that seal could have been broken with a fault or a fracture? Okay, so and I'll talk about how we try and do that. So what happens with the CO2? So you know about liquid, solid, and gas, right? So CO2 solid at -109 Fahrenheit, and the gas basically conditions we're at, right? And you can liquefy it really easily, you know, if you have a soda stream, yeah, it's going to be in liquid form in that thing. And there's something else called basically supercritical fluid, and that's nothing to worry about. It's just a fourth phase of kind of material that nobody tells us about. And you know, instead they should be. It's kind of between. It's halfway between a liquid and a gas. Okay, it's got unique properties, and it's just when you get to a certain temperature, which isn't very high, only about 90 some degrees Fahrenheit, and a certain pressure that would only be about 2,000 feet down with the water pressure, then it's going to be supercritical. It's just like, right, you know, for this to be that, it has to be at a certain temperature, right? For it to be any of these things, you have to have a certain pressure and temperature. So it's just called a supercritical fluid. It's just another form of CO2. And its density is about 2/3 that of water. So when they inject it at those pressures and temperatures that are going to be down there, right, it'll be a supercritical fluid and it'll float on top of the water. It'll put in the brine, and it's going to be there in kind of a plume floating on top of the water. Just like if you put oil in there, right, the oil would float to the top too, right, because it's lighter than water, especially those brines. Those brines are a lot heavier than water. So how do you look at this thing? So I already mentioned drilling, right? So they have to drill, make sure what they'll do there is they'll drill a borehole. They'll do a lot of different things, and it is a different instruments you put into it. You measure a lot of the physical properties. You want to know how porous it is. You want to know how fluids are going to flow into it. All these different kinds of things are going to be really important for the evaluation if they go ahead or not, right? And other things you're going to do is seismology like this. And so I do a lot of this. I actually have my own little vibrator truck, and I brought that down from Alberta. And so these are much bigger than mine, right? I don't know if they shot seismic around here. That's all. They have. Okay. Yeah. So some people have probably seen these vehicles. What you do is you put what are called geophones. These are the modern ones. They basically, you put them out there and they record, and then these trucks go around and vibrate and put the seismic waves in. And then the seismic waves go down. And when you have different kinds of rock types, say that sandstone onto that shale, you get an echo because it's a change in the properties. And so it's actually, you collect vast amounts of data and you stick it into a computer, and that's a whole course, but you end up with something that looks like this. Okay, sometimes you're just 2D. This is a 3D volume of data. And you see these kind of lines in there. Those are all representative of echoes coming back from the different contacts between the different rock layers. So you can map out, you know where the borehole is, you can compare this to the borehole, you map out what all these layers are, you know exactly what they are. Now you look at this data, it'll be interpreted, and so you want to see what, you know, where the layers are, how thick they are, interpret them. But you also want to look for, are there any things like faults or breaks in anything here, because you don't want that, right? You want to avoid any kind of breakthrough that impermeable shale that I was talking about. So this part of the world is pretty boring in terms of geology. So I don't know what they're going to find, right? I know other places they've come and they've shown it to the communities, and other communities have actually maybe even had them pay for third-person consultant to look at the data, right? To assess it. But you'd interpret it and you'd look for offsets, say in the layers, things like that might tell you if there's a break. So those are, you know, that's the biggest concern, right? Probably with this is there some way that CO2 could leak out is the worst, or is it, you want it trapped forever. So you want to make sure as best you can that there isn't any way for it to leak out. So in one way it could be, you could have a fault, or, you know, a natural fault that's been there for millions of years. It could be a pathway for fluids to come up. Okay, and that's what the seismic is trying to do, to avoid that. You're trying to look for any kind of features like that. So the other way, okay, so they shoot one here. They probably shot some 2D already. They were actually they were south of Lafayette, and I took my students out, the geophysics students, because they don't get an opportunity to see that much here, right? They were shooting seismic just south of Lafayette a couple of weeks ago for another project, right, at an ethanol plant there. And so what they'll do is they'll make one run and they get this baseline, and they'll do that before anything's ever been injected, right? And then they'll start, if everything's good and they get the approvals, then it looks safe, then they'll start injecting. And then what you do is you go out after the fact, say 3 or 4 years, 5 years maybe, you repeat that survey. And the CO2, just its presence in the rock is going to change the rock properties enough so you get the echoes change, if that makes sense. And so we can track that in this data by looking at the changes in the echoes. Okay, and you can actually track where the CO2 is moving out from the borehole using geophysics that way. So that's called active source seismology. Okay, and that's where you're actually imaging, making images of the surface. Now, there's another thing, it's called passive seismology, and they'll do this, and they'll probably go to different farms and have put seismometers in permanently. And that's because you know you're worried about the risk of potential seismicity, right? I think that's probably what a lot of people would worry about. And so you have these seismometers around, and they're just, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, streaming data up to satellites that go down to places that basically monitor that all the time, right? And so they'll be looking and waveforms will come in, and then, but anyways, the data goes somewhere and if somebody's monitoring it all the time, it'll ring an alarm if they start to see something crackling down there. And probably most times there's going to be some crackling, right? You're changing the earth a little bit, but it's at such a small scale, you'll never feel it, right? So at the surface of the earth. So, but you want to avoid something worse happening, right? So you've got these things, and then you hear a bunch of little crackles. That's okay, right? But then if you start to see a pattern of this stuff that we never feel on the surface, right? Unless something really went, and then if you start to see a pattern of those in the subsurface, that they'd map it out, then they'd probably shut it down or something, and change the process, right? So that's called traffic lights, and they do that with injections and with in the oil industry and with hydraulic fracturing, where there's induced seismicity in Alberta. It's called traffic light. So you're sitting there monitoring all the time. And with the seismology, just like you'd be looking for earthquakes, okay? And so that's what there's two aspects. There's this active stuff to image the subsurface, and then there's going to be this. It's called passive. It's just sitting there recording all the time, looking for induced seismicity. Okay, and so that's passive, listening for microseismicity. So what kind of infrastructure is there going to be? I don't know anything about the plan here, but the other plants typically, right, they're almost going to do it on their site or very close, right? So there's short pipelines with CO2 in them. But there's, I don't know, 5,000-6,000 miles of CO2 pipelines around the states already, right? Most of it for that oil injections in Louisiana, Mississippi. And this is the infrastructure. They'll be drilling and completion. That'll be pretty short, right? The drill rig will go in. They'll have a pad, maybe a few acres, right? With the landowner, or maybe even on their own site. I have no idea what the plans are with this one, right? And it'd be a pad. There'd be a drill rig. It would drill down, and they get the data out. They get core samples, all this kind of stuff, right? That would be studied. And then they put in steel casing, actually special steel casing, because it's for the CO2, very expensive kind of stainless steel type stuff. And that's called completion. And so that would take, there'd be a pad where they then put kind of a system at the top of valves and that to control flows, right? So, and then into the pipeline. So that it would be a little patch of land that they'd probably have sealed off and secured. And that's to the wellheads, right? So to be, like I said, a little plot that it would be sitting on, and then they'd have an access road or whatever, okay? And again, I have no idea. Then there'd be monitoring. They'd probably put geophones or seismometers, 4 or 5 or 6 of them around the area, very close to it, you know, on people's farms and doing that. But another thing that if I was going to do this and protect myself, you know, I'd make sure that you'd measure people's groundwater, all of that, well ahead of time, know what their water chemistry is. And then I know in the project I was with in Saskatchewan, that's what they did, right? They go get all the water wells and maybe even put in some water wells to monitor, right? So, and just make sure nothing's changing with them with time, right? So there's both the geophysical and then things like groundwater that you'd be watching for, groundwater and microseisms. So what are some of the risks? Oh, an active, this would be actually looking for it. That's where you'd go and repeat with the vibrator trucks on a time period. So risk, CO2 leaks from surface infrastructure, right? So the CO2 itself isn't poisonous, but you can asphyxiate if you get too high concentration, right? So there's been problems with some of this in Mississippi, where pipeline broke and, you know, cars wouldn't start, things like that. And people do die from CO2, right? I guess the firemen probably know that, right? So I was down in Princeton. This had nothing to do with CO2 injection, but it was 3 years ago. I was giving a talk, 2.5 years ago, maybe at Princeton. And the week before, I don't know if everybody remembers, there was this super low pressure area came through and CO2 leaked into people's basement and from the ground in that area. Don't ask me what was with the ground, but a lady died because of CO2 in the basement. Okay, so, but CO2 itself is not really poisonous, but if there's too much of it, then you asphyxiate, right? So that's a risk that people on call, right, would have to know about and would be trained and everything to deal with, right? CO2 leaks from the underground. And so this is one, it's quite far away. It's hard to give a scale for how deep that is, right? If we're looking a couple miles down there almost, maybe not a couple miles here, but at least 1.5 miles that it's away. And so trying to get a scale of that is a little bit difficult, but that's the reason you put it down so deep. You want it as deep as far as possible. And you want it with a really good seal. And then you want the possibility of other seals on top of it. So there's that one shale, the Eau Claire, but then there's other ones above it, right? That could also. And that would be evaluated, right? Using the seismology and doing testing in the wells and things like that to try and away from it. But this is one, it's probably not so much a risk here, but in Alberta, where I was from, or Texas, right? Where people were putting in boreholes for the last 100 years and some of them weren't very good, you know, completed very well. They weren't sealed very well, right? Old boreholes, if there was an old borehole there and it went down to the zone that had the CO2, then that could be a risk. But here, I don't know, there's probably been very little drilling and it's probably a pretty low risk here, okay? So because there just aren't any boreholes that go that deep, anywhere close to it. So faults in the cap rock that could leak, right? That's from the underground. And then the possibility of small earthquakes, right? And again, that's what, you know, they look at are there any kind of features in the subsurface, any kind of faults that we can see from the seismology that might be of concern, right? And then I don't know, you know, they'd have to, they probably wouldn't do it, right, if there was a huge fault. But the geology here is pretty flat line. There really hasn't been a lot of tectonics, right? If you go down that way towards southeast, right, then there are places where there's seismicity. But there isn't really much seismicity around here naturally, right? there's probably not really any faults. But I don't know, right? That's what they'll have to evaluate by doing the geophysics. And that's about it. Okay, so the risks, I went through some of those already. Leaks from the underground, old boreholes, and undetected, this kind of repeat and seismicity. But you're getting it taken out of the atmosphere permanently, right? And it's good for POET in the long run, probably, so they can keep operating. It's called dependable. So I think that's about all I have to say. I hope I haven't talked too long. But I don't know anything about the legal aspects of this, right? I'm no lawyer. I'm a scientist, so yeah.
But we have a lot of old abandoned gas wells that were like 1,500 feet deep. Would that concern you at all?
Well, what I'd have to see is how deep they went, right? And then how close they are gonna be. Was this an old gas producing area for the glass and that? Yeah, okay. So yeah, so I'm sure they're looking at that, right? Yeah, and if there's one nearby, right? So
There's a lot.
yeah. So, okay, yeah, so that's on them. They're gonna have to find out what's there
I
and,
mean, I don't know if there's any restrictions.
yeah. So the typical the amount they put in, it's maybe gonna spread, for what they're gonna be permitted for. It's, usually say about a mile or so, right? And that's why, one of the reasons they want to do the seismology, it's called time-lapse seismology, because it's like making a movie. You make one set of data and you take another set of data 5 years later and 5 years later, right? Then you can actually see it moving. And then they can actually track where it's going in the subsurface, right? So if there's concerns, then that would be another place it would come up, right? Sure. But yeah, no, if there's boreholes around, they should certainly be looking at those and, yeah. But did they go, they probably did not go all the way. Very few people went down to this Mount Simon.
I
Yeah.
don't think, like I said, I think they were from
Yeah.
probably
No, but
800
no.
feet to 1,500.
Yeah. So, but it's a concern, right? Yeah. If it went all the way through and it was an old borehole and they hadn't done it properly, which they didn't, right? Because there was groundwater contamination and that from leaking, those old leaking wells, right?
There are artesian wells in the area.
Yeah,
Not natural, but yeah.
My parents' well to their house is an old gas.
And it did it bring up yeah, I know, yeah, it's, I know a lot of farmers right in the south there too are just drilling short wells and getting gas, right? But that's not anywhere near this stuff, yeah. So, but yeah, they really gotta look at those, yeah. Because who knows, maybe somebody thought, yeah, I don't know, but you'd have to go look at the history. The Geological Survey, you can actually go onto their website and,
USGS.
not the USGS, no, the Indiana Geological and Water Survey.
Okay.
And you can go to their website and they have a really good database actually of the wells that are there. And you can see a map, right, of the county.
What was the
Zoom
website
in.
again?
I'll send a link later, right, but it's the Indiana Geological and Water Survey. And it's a little bit hard to find, so I'll send a link for what that is, so you guys can certainly go look at that and see what wells are around, right?
And whether they're on there or not.
Huh?
And whether they're on the
Well,
database or not.
They should be, right, because they should have been, if they were old gas wells, I'm sure they were still licensed, even if it was 60 years ago or whatever, right? So.
100 years.
Oh, wow.
Over 100 years.
These are all 100-year-old
Okay,
wells.
actually, I was surprised I was finding these things out where I was, right? I was trying to get data near Lafayette and and I just would have hated to been on a drill rig and those, because they were just pounding for like probably 2 years. Anyway, that's a different story instead of,
I have a quick,
sure, absolutely.
like you said, if the CO2 seeps into the brine, is there a reaction?
Yeah, well, you're hoping there, so you're putting it in and some of it's gonna be trapped as that fluid, right?
Right,
Yeah. But then you want it to react in the long term, so it becomes a mineral.
Minerals.
Yeah, so you get
So
kind
there's
of,
no negative
Hmm?
of that, there's no negativity to that if it leaks out into the brine.
no, it has to,
Okay.
right? Because they're pumping it in under pressure, it's pushing it in, it's pushing the water away.
Right.
And it's kind of balanced by these capillary forces. It's not gonna go forever. This is the questions I've had before, right? So where's all the water going? And part of the reason is just that's such a vast amount of brine down there compared to the amount of CO2 they're gonna put in. It's just a perturbation. But the other good question people have asked at other meetings is, well, how do you know it's not just gonna go forever, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things is the capillary forces, but then, we hope, it should sit there and react over long time periods and become a mineral, yeah.
And then you said that after years, the CO2 moves kind of out.
Yeah, so that's.
So is it
it'll move
protected
out.
all the way wherever it moves?
No, so it'll, yeah, well, that's one of the things, right? They want to make sure it isn't, taking off, find some really permeable channel or something
Yeah.
where, right? And that's what the time-lapse seismology would try and
And then you
detect, yeah.
stop that, stop pumping.
Well, they'd have to stop pumping, then the pressures go down and then it stops, right? And the capillary pressures push back on it. So that's, yeah. It was, yeah.
I have a question about, let's say, for whatever reason, we decide to stop pumping this CO2.
Right.
So is the land able to be returned into good workable?
Well,
It's not
there's
gonna be a
no-
brown
There
field.
there isn't really gonna be, it's just gonna be that little well pad area that's impacted,
Okay.
right? Yeah, nothing on the surface, none of the farms are, except for, where they dig the pipeline and where they put that pad for the wellhead, which is, an acre, a couple acres, right? It's pretty small, right? Well, yeah, so, no, it's down there, it's, down forever, so it should, it should never make it up anywhere near the surface. So, yeah, so unless something happens, and hopefully that wouldn't, but, yeah, I mean, you can't say there's absolutely no risk to everything, right? But I think in this part of the world, the risk is probably fairly small, just because there's not a lot of tectonics, the rocks aren't broken up. They're boring geology, if I could say that, nice layered kind of, yeah.
Actually answered it. It was just what kind of risk factors. I know we're saying there's risk, but what real examples have happened that's been negative? I mean.
Well, I
there's a lot
Okay, from this, for just getting rid of CO2, for getting rid of CO2 sake, I don't think there's been any problems yet. But like I said, in Mississippi, or I can't remember if it's Mississippi or Louisiana, there was a pipeline leakage, right? There was a big storm and the pipeline leaked. You can find it on the web. And people have been discussing that, right? Like people's cars wouldn't start and all that kind of stuff, right? Some people might have passed out, right? So that's why, it's the biggest risk is probably not the subsurface. It's probably the infrastructure, right? Yeah.
Might be.
At the surface. Yeah.
I have a couple too. Is the permitting agency EPA?
Okay, I'm not aware. So it certainly has to go through the EPA. It has to go through an approval process at the EPA. I don't know if the state has the final call on that or not.
We're region 6, but it's still, our local IDEM is the local EPA for Indiana.
Yeah, yeah,
But I didn't know if it's federally permitted and or
Well,
locally
I
permitted.
think it has to be, I actually don't know that, but I do know that they have to go through this regulatory process with the EPA, right? So they have to drill that well. They have to know what's there. They have to know how much and they have to model how much they could actually put in. They have to do a lot of work. They have to do their seismology. They have to guarantee they're gonna keep doing monitoring, all of that, right? So that's come from the EPA.
Do you know if that's available online, what all the requirements are?
I can look for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called, they're called,
Google it too, but
yeah, well, no, there's, because you might not, so there's something called class 6 wells. That's what the well will
Okay.
be, okay? But, so that'll be on my to-do list when I get home, probably tomorrow now.
Thank you.
I think I'm, and so what was the other question? It was, the map for the Indiana, right, wells, and then, I'll find that, yeah.
Is the seismology monitoring required forever once it's installed?
I
past-
think that would be part of the EPA.
Part of the program?
Yeah, so, yeah.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, sure.
And I'm just going to, because obviously this is all very overwhelming. I can't even wrap my mind, but you said benefits are permanently removed from atmosphere.
Right.
How is it being dispersed now? I mean.
Well, it's
we
just
got
going to the atmosphere right now, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not as much risk with it. I guess I don't understand the purpose. of
Well,
like-
you know, tax
Okay,
credits,
there you
basically, I
go.
mean, what- I'm actually still surprised they have the tax credits, but the tax credits are there particularly for biofuels,
Okay,
right?
and then,
Yeah,
Greenhouse gases and
greenhouse, yeah.
and global warming.
Yeah.
Concerns.
okay, thank you. And then you probably can't answer this, but I didn't know if someone could, where are they with the process? Do we know where we're at? Well,
Well, you said they shot seismic, somebody?
yeah,
Yeah, so they've started to look, huh?
This meeting that we attended, they had done some seismic on the road. I think heard a lot about there's trucks going up and down 1,000, or what is that, 100?
Mhm.
What are they doing? That's what they were doing. They were doing that seismic, sending those first radio waves down through the soil. I am not real sure. We did hear that after harvest season, they would be doing these same types of tracks through the fields. I don't know if that has happened yet or not, but I'm assuming that it has, that they made these passes all through the fields that surround Pellet
Yeah,
to get those
you can-
readings.
You can probably give more detail than I can. We've done 2D seismic.
Okay,
in the area.
yeah,
We've
yeah,
done all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We filed a class 6 permit with the federal EPA. It's been filed. We were planning to do 3D seismic with the geophones and the thumper trucks for 3D after harvest is done. So sometime probably ideally January timeframe.
Right, yeah. So that's what they, so 2D is they just make one profile to reconnaissance to begin with, right? And then what he was talking was 3D, where then they put it out in a grid and then they run the vibrators over an area. That's, you know, so they
There's
can,
really right now, all the data is that Professor Schmidt covered. We're gathering all that data to build those models.
yeah. So it's a lot of data. It takes a while. It has to go and crank through big computer because, yeah, processing. It's
so
coming.
it's still early.
So does Poet relay the information that you get to the city? I mean, like, how does that information get dispersed of what you found out?
We've had Marinez Road to the plant several times for updates on the project.
So you update the mayor then?
Yeah, it's not, we haven't,
Yeah, but I just want to know how it was dispersed.
just, we've met with the mayor and some county council members and county zoning boards and some other folks like that get updates on it when we have new information.
There's an open invitation. But we all like to correct, we're happy to have you and provide progress updates.
Sure. Yeah, there's nothing to hide.
Do you have any idea, as EPA told you what the timeline is for the permitting process?
Permit was filed in November of 2024, I believe. And it's typically, we've been, prior was told 18 to 24 months before they would approve it.
Okay.
And I think it's longer than that.
Yeah, I think there's so many now, right?
Yeah.
And they're understaffed and, yeah.
Yeah, I think, Professor mentioned, I think pretty much every ethanol refinery in the state is somewhere along in the process of
Yeah,
pursuing this.
it seems like it. It went to a lot of little, you know.
Plant
different
Cardinal
ones, but-
Ethanol and Winchester is working on this project, and they're a bit farther ahead than we are in the timeline.
I was gonna ask if anybody's ahead of you in line that we can watch. Okay.
Can I ask you, I mean, do you have communication with your neighbors out there? I mean, I don't live in that area, so I feel like I almost don't have a dog in the fight, but are there concerns for the people who live in that rural area for, I don't know, increased noise, increased traffic? Are there concerns about CO2 buildup or anything seismic activity in that area? What are the people who live in that area communicating to you guys?
The Vault has met with, I think, every landowner within a mile radius of the plant on various things, and we've been listening and taking information and also having discussions about leasing the pore space, you know, as the plume goes down and spreads out, you know, 4,000, 5,000 feet down below. You know, the people that live at the surface own that space 5,000 feet below their feet. So there's some leasing
agreements that they need to agree to have that done in their land. So they've met with pretty much everybody that would, any of that plume that would be physically in that radius. Pretty much all the landowners would have had ideally had some discussion with the Vault team by now about that, which would include those kind of concerns.
So
Similar
it's
to-
really busy.
Similar to mineral rights leases.
Yeah, similar to it's called the pore space, and who owns the pore space, right? And, yeah, and so,
Yeah, so if you drilled 5,000 feet deep right here, this building, the owner of this piece of property right here would own that 5,000 feet below the surface as well. So they're in agree, they have to agree and sign off on some lease agreements and have negotiations as well.
so there was quite a bit, like 2.5 years ago in the state legislature, right, where they came up with these rules for, if you have landowners in an area, how much they'd be compensated for, all that kind of stuff, right, yeah. I'm not a lawyer, but I kind of, you can find those bills, right, yeah.
You did an excellent job explaining.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks, okay.
And what the Fresca didn't mention that the injection would be for our project would be on Poet. So if there's no pipelines or anything involved in our process, it's all right there.
Right
on
there.
Our property,
Yeah.
right next to our plant.
Thank you.
Any infrastructure stuff would be right there at Poet.
Are you guys gonna drill soon there?
That would be ideal.
Yeah. I mean, for the, at least that's, well, I mean, there's first, they may never, well, called the strat well, right? Yeah, just to
Yeah,
understand.
there's
what's
some
there
discussion about a
before-
test well.
Yeah, just to understand what's there, right? 'Cause- so- Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, no problem. I'm happy to do it, right? It's good to talk. I like to get feedback from what people are thinking too.
Yeah, if you wanted to come out to Poet sometime,
I gotta buy it.
Mayor Rachel know how to get a hold of us, so be glad to give you an update.
And if you have other questions, like I said, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, right? So, I think I'm easy to find, or you guys can find me right through that.
I do.
Yeah. So,
Hope having him come in gives you guys a better understanding as you guys get questions and as Poet moves their plans forward and kind of lets us know where the city falls in all of this. We really wanted to have an outside, somebody who didn't know about the project, know much detail, but knew the science of it all come in and talk to each of you. It was very important to Todd to make sure that you guys had someone impartial to collect information from. So
And we're just
Hey, Mayor, can you hear me? Couldn't over the video. So with the call, this is the one thing I know. When it comes to the utility rates, we've been working on putting together the rates. The idea was that it would be the three different rates that Baker Tilly had talked about and that you guys would make a decision on. That is getting to be extraordinarily difficult to try and do that logistically. So what I wanted to propose to the council, and if you're okay with it, is we'll create the ordinance for the highest of the rates for all of the utilities. And then go ahead and advertise that so that the process starts, because once you advertise the highest, you can elect something lower than that if you choose not to go with the highest number.
Jewel, I remember you saying that. I think we're all in agreement for that because we knew we could back it down once that data was available as
Okay.
far as water and things like that.
Okay, and then so the next question is, do you want me to prepare the advertisement for your January meeting?
That'd be great.
The second meeting in January?
Do we want it first or the second? Second? Okay, yeah, second meeting.
Okay, and just so I have it straight in my head, then we are going to advertise for a public hearing on utility rates for all four utilities on January 19th. Is that correct?
Goodbye. Let me verify. Tuesday, January 20th, because the 19th is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So it'll be Tuesday, January 20th will be your advertisement.
Okay,
Or public hearing, I apologize.
okay. Then January 20th, got it. So Tuesday, January 20th, we'll schedule for the public hearing on all four, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, water, sewer, storm, and trash,
Sure.
the four.
It is that. All right. Thank you, Jewel. Come on in. Okay, next meeting will be working session December 15th. I'll accept the motion to adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? Thanks, Jewel.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.